Welcome to the Stray Red Card, where both hosts now enjoy open lines of communication with management now that Peter Novak has been let go. Gentlemen, I guess that was a little bust on, I guess a tribute to Califf, Danny Califf. Did you catch that? Saying that he appreciated, now that he's on Chivas, the, quote, open lines of communication with management.
Well, at least there he'll probably find out that he has an injury before the game.
Yeah, they'll let him know.
They'll let him know if he has an injury before the game. Yeah.
Well, the big news, Brett, of course, is that Klinsmann went ahead and he named more players. So we are at 27 now. But I think one of the things, let's just start with the surprises of, the surprise guys that didn't make the squad. My number one surprise guy is Brek Shea. And why do I say that? I say that because out on the left midfield, if you don't have Brek Shea and you're still planning on playing Altidore up top with two wingers and then Dempsey behind Altidore, and then you have Jones and Bradley in the midfield. I'm going to go through the whole lineup. But the point is that if you don't have a legitimate left midfielder, which you could say maybe Fabian Johnson could play left midfield, but we all know he's going to be playing left back, right?
At least for the big important games, yes.
So, to me, Shea always was this big, huge favorite with Klinsmann. And Klinsmann saying this is his roster for qualifying, and all of a sudden, my Mr. Favorite guy, Mr. Brek Shea, Klinsmann's one of his favorites, obviously, he's not there. I mean, how do we explain it?
I think Klinsmann explained it. He said that Shea's form on and off the field just wasn't up to par, basically, and he has to get that situated.
Yeah.
And not the exact words, of course. I don't have the quote in front of me, but he flat out came out and said, we've been evaluating his play with FC Dallas in the previous U.S. national team games, and basically he just didn't meet the par.
Well, Donovan has been playing pretty crappy too, but not that crappy. I mean, Donovan, he's guaranteed.
Definitely, he's guaranteed a roster spot.
His experience alone gets him over the hump.
Given this roster and our complete lack of depth on wing, he's guaranteed a starting spot.
All right, yeah, no, I agree with you.
I mean, we were talking about, you talked about this with Shea. Other wingers that I'm surprised that were not potentially called up or even called up was like DeMarcus Beasley.
Yeah,
he's quite serviceable. He's on good form.
Yep.
He has the experience at the international level. He might not have the wheels that he used to have, but you know what? He's still very serviceable.
And he can play out left, which is just one of the from left back to left midfield. This is not a strength of this team unless you plan on going all the way back and playing Dempsey out left and playing Donovan out right, and then having them switch back and forth throughout the game as they used to do in the old days. I
had to resort back to almost like a Bradley 4-2-2 to make that work.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't understand this then, because your options then are Donovan can play left mid out in the left as a winger. So what, do you put Williams on the right? That's another option because
that might very well be the option, to tell you the truth.
He's done it before.
If we're looking at the roster, another glaring option in the winger spot that's missing here is Gott.
Yeah.
He's doing well at this club, and you'd imagine that once again, given the lack of depth in our winger spot, that you'd have to start relying on your youth players. He's doing well internationally at his club.
Yep.
I don't see why you wouldn't give him a call up, but whatever. It is what it is. Mm-hmm. And right now, the way I'm looking at it is, I think we're going to see throughout the 5 games of this camp. There's going to be 5 games. There's Scotland, Brazil, Canada, and the 2 qualifiers.
Right.
I think we're definitely going to see Williams play outright at some point. Obviously Donovan's going to be on the wing, and I really think that we're going to see Castillo and Johnson split responsibilities as far as that wing back and the winger is concerned throughout the friendlies and the qualifiers. Yeah. Maybe not every game, But I'm just saying, I think we may get a good view into seeing how either of them play at either position.
You see a game where Castillo maybe plays left back and Johnson plays left midfield.
It's very possible. I mean, given our depth at left back in this roster, you have Bocanegra, you have Castillo, and you have Johnson.
But you can't take Boca out of the middle.
You can't take Boca out of the middle because that
can't.
only leaves really Gooch and Goodson. And then Cameron if he stays, and then you can always slide Parkhurst into the middle, but he's more of a wingback at the international stage.
Yeah, it becomes really tricky because I really think you have to keep either Boca Goodson or Boca Onyewu in the middle because that's our top. Those are our top center backs. I don't want to start messing around with Goodson Onyewu or Goodson, whoever. Let's keep Boca in the middle. And because we play a more attacking style, really Boca doesn't really fit into that style at all. If you're going to play, when he plays left back, it's more just a defensive role. He doesn't go up the field much. It just makes the whole left side kind of weak. So again, I was surprised that there was no Shea, and I agree his form isn't up to par. However, how about this as an option? When Gomez plays for Santos, and this is a crazy idea here, but when he plays for Santos, he does play out he plays right forward. He is one of the guys obviously attacking the goal, but he does play out right. I don't see anything that would maybe stop. Now, granted, in the past that hasn't always worked for Gomez, but
he's always played more of an out-and-out winger. With Colorado and Kansas City, it was very much he was a true winger. They kept him on the side, and it basically played more of a 4-4-2 type style. Mm-hmm. And he was treated as thus. In a true 4-3-3, I think given his ability in the attack, and then obviously he would have some defensive responsibilities, but not necessarily tracking all the way back. I think if you're going to play a true 4-3-3 with Gomez up top as one of the outside wingers, the center three are going to have to pretty much be, almost like a combination of Bradley, Jones, and Adu. They're going to have to cover a lot of ground if they're going to play a true 4-3-3. The 4-3-3s we've played in the past have really turned out to be more 4-5-1s, and it really left Josie out in the middle of nowhere.
Yeah, but then if you're playing Dempsey right behind Altidore, which come on, that's just been what Klinsmann...
Well, then you wouldn't be able to play the 4-3-3 with Dempsey behind Altidore because that would take away one of the central mids, and then you're playing with two defensive mids that's going to have to cover a lot of ground.
That's correct, which means Gomez will have to track back and play more defense, and that's the only thing I think stopping that from happening because I think Gomez does a fabulous job for Santos, sniffing out the goal, knowing when, from that right side, he should cut in and be in front of the goal. And then, he's really actually been very good for them, especially through the qualifiers, at handling the ball on the right wing, too, and crossing the ball and then figuring out a way to get in. I don't know. It's another option, but, without Shea, things become a lot more... it just opens up the field of questions. Do you stick... And that's the thing. We're going to have these friendlies first, and when we play Scotland, we're going to play more offensive, and it's going to be more like what we're talking about now with Dempsey playing behind Altidore, and then who knows what we do or go to when we play Brazil. I would imagine it'd be a little more defensive oriented.
Very Italian style, the way we played against Italy.
Yeah.
Gomez had 18 goals in 32 games this past calendar year. That's a pretty good record. That's a pretty good stat to have. Mm-hmm. You don't want him tracking all the way back into the defense.
Right.
You want him as close to that goal as possible, so whenever that shot comes and it deflects off the goalie or a defender, that you're going to have Gomez right there to pounce on it. Mm-hmm. You don't want him tracking back into the midfield and back into the defense. It's just a waste of talent. It really is.
Well, and I see it more likely that you try something like that with Gomez versus Scotland because you're not going to mess with it during Brazil because Brazil will eat our lunch. And then during qualifiers, depending on, the situation, well, in Canada, versus Canada, we should be much more offensive, too, the friendly before the qualifiers. During qualifiers, it looks like, why not be more offensive? Why not put Gomez up there on the right and play it almost like a 4-3-3 if we can? But you're right. It would be weird because our 4-3-3 never really looks like a 4-3.
It never looks like a 4-3-3.
Never plays like one. It always looks and plays more like a 4-5-1. Always.
And even when we get into the attack and we try to push numbers forward, those outside strikers act like true wingers. I mean, it happened with Shea and Rogers early on in the cycle. They would get out wide and they would look for those crosses. The problem is they're crossing into a box that only has Josie with 4 defenders around him.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to work around this. The 4-3-3 is not going to play that type of a style game, and it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, well, in Dempsey, in that situation, needs to make sure he is really right behind Altidore. I mean, he is kind of the playmaker in this situation, but when the ball is out wide, he needs to get his ass in the middle, and they need to rely on Jones and Bradley if the ball needs to come backwards, or the wings, or the left backs and right backs, if they need to maneuver backwards again. But Dempsey and Altidore truly need to act a lot more like strikers, or in Dempsey's case, more an off striker for real, or else we're just not going to have the bodies in the box to make that happen. And Donovan can operate from the left midfield. I'm not worried about that if that's what has to happen. I'm really not.
Done it before in the past. I mean, like him on the right-hand side, but you know what? If we have to shift him to the left-hand side, he's still serviceable, and he can still cut into the middle onto his right foot, which is the dominant foot.
Right. And that brings us to some of the other people that were slighted, omitted, snubbed. Kenny Cooper. That name brought up quite a bit because, you know what? Juan Agudelo made this team. And
Klinsmann brought him up.
We're right. I mean, Juan Agudelo can't get a sniff of playing time. Now he's at Chivas, and of course he is now. But why call up Agudelo and not Cooper? I don't know. It's a good question.
My guess is that he just simply doesn't rate Cooper above the other options that he has, and he's bringing up Agudelo just to give him more international experience as far as the training and development of camp goes. I totally see Agudelo as being one of the 4 players that are going to be cut. I don't see him cracking the striker list, and that's just my opinion on the matter.
The only way he doesn't get cut is if Klinsmann wants the option of having a quicker forward, because if you go down the line of all the forwards, they're all big dudes. Altidore, Boyd, Clint Dempsey's not. I mean, he's not a speedster. Landon Donovan's listed as a striker. I don't see him, or forward.
No.
I don't see him playing forward
unless we play 4-3-3.
Yeah, and Hercules Gomez and Wondolowski, they're not speedsters either. You have no
They're classic poachers.
Right. So in the classic Bradley style, he liked to always play one big body along with one very fast body up front. That was his thing. So he liked to have Altidore and then a speedster to play next to Altidore up there. Well, obviously Klinsmann scratched that because that's not
Finley
his.
Hasn't got a call up since.
Right, and you know what? Exactly, and you don't play Agudelo at this point. If you're talking about somebody who has proven nothing this season so far, and you're willing to say Shea is out of form, then what the hell is Agudelo doing in this 27?
That's a good question. And given the fact that they called up they called up 7 strikers. That's counting Donovan. So they called up 6 strikers in this 27-man roster. My get, like I said beforehand, I think they just called him up strictly because he wants them to get more camp experience. He's a young striker. He has more upside potential than what Cooper's going to have over the next couple of years. Cooper, you have what you have.
Yeah.
I mean, he has a pretty good record with the United States, in all honesty, and he's having a hell of a year with New York Red Bulls.
Yep.
If it was an important qualifier right now, I would definitely call up Cooper over Agudelo in this situation. But given the fact that it's camp and he's going to be cutting 4 players, one of them most likely being Agudelo, I could see why he doesn't call him.